All right, welcome to Giants Nation. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner. We got a special episode. It's my vacation week, and as you can see, I'm doing the intro and the outro at the beach. The whole episode is not at the beach, although it would be cool to get these guys down here at the beach. We've got Trevor Sikkema, PFF Stock Exchange, Nate Tice of Yahoo Sports, Big Game Bengal, and then No Flags Film, James Foster. We're talking Jaxson Dart and some stuff in between there. Nate Tice, we ended up spending like 10 minutes on next year's draft. Trevor Sikkema, we talk about Jaden Daniels and scouting him in his rookie year. So some good stuff in there with some of the best guys in the sports media or the NFL draft talk. So really good stuff. So I'm taking a week off. But again, wanted to have this episode for you guys. And when I come back from work or from the week off, we're doing a 24-hour stream on Wednesday. Not sure what time we're starting that, like 12. Sometime between 12 and 2. So make sure you join that. We're raising money to have a Giants Nation flag. Not flag, Giants Nation plane for one of the Giants home games this year. Hopefully the Giants are good and there's like no one's asking me to have it negative because it's not going to be negative. It's going to be a positive plane. But if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Giants Nation. I don't have the list of the new Patreons' names in front of me, but that's the way to support the show, to keep this thing going, to help us do bigger and better things. So patreon.com/Giants Nation. Again, I'm addicted to doing the show in different places. And this is cool, right? Like do it at the beach. You got the storm. You got all these sea turtle nests in the background. You have to avoid them. So some good stuff. All right, so we're going to go in order. You have James Foster. We're going to put him last. Big Game Bengals second to last. Nate Tice second. And then let's kick it to Trevor Sikkema of PFF Stock Exchange. All right, we're now welcome on Trevor Sikkema of the PFF Stock Exchange podcast and PFF in general. Trevor, thanks for jumping on with me. Just going to get right into it. Now that we're not talking about Jaxson Dart and where you're going to draft him and what team's going to pick him and all that, now that he's just on the New York Giants, they've invested in him. What are your overall thoughts on him and how to, whether it's to develop him or things that he does well and how you try to groom that or how he may struggle?
Yeah, look, I think it's a good landing spot, honestly. He was somebody who I think a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, like let's talk about Jaxson Dart in like the top 10. Like people were talking about maybe like drafting him in the top 5. I know it was sort of more of like Shedeur Sanders if the Giants were going to take one in the top 5. But like I had heard that same sort of conversation for Jaxson Dart being picked in the first half of the first round. And obviously the potential is there for him, right? The multi-sport background, being a baseball guy, being a football guy. I know that teams really love when you have that multi-sport background to you. He's a big game hunter, as Nate Tice would say, who I love his football work as well. And I think that that's a fun phrase that he has coined, is just somebody who loves to find those deep shots down the field. And what I like about that is of course, like people like to point to the big time throws, the explosives and things like that. I kind of explain it a little bit differently. Like when I talked about Cam Ward, for example, as my number 1 quarterback in this past year's draft, the reason why I had him there isn't because he was like an Andrew Luck type of a prospect or a Cam Newton type of a prospect or something like that. But when I looked at him versus I think the rest of these quarterbacks, he was at least one of the quarterbacks where I said to myself, okay, he will at least look at the throws that you have to make in the NFL week in and week out, that you have to be able to make to win football games. Jaxson Dart is at least one of those other quarterbacks. And so, yeah, okay, like the late game situations, the 2-minute drill stuff, like how he's finishing things on the off script drives, the off script plays, things like that, I think he needs to get better at. But at least what you have here is a good landing spot with him getting to work with Brian Daboll, who I really respect as a guy who works with quarterbacks. So I'd like that landing spot there for him. And then also just the fact that he is going to be a quarterback that is not afraid to attempt the throws that you have to make to win in this league. And I think that mentality part of it, as much as the physical abilities, is why you take a chance on a player like this. And so, he's coming from an offense at Ole Miss that there have been some quarterbacks, over the last couple of years where it's like, all right, they put up incredible stats, even in the SEC, but Lane Kiffin's system hasn't always been the most friendly when going from college to the NFL. It feels very simplified for quarterbacks. And when you get to the league, you have to do, a lot more is on your plate. You've got to diagnose a lot more in the pre and post snap. It's not as much like, hey, we're going to watch this one defender. We're going to put him in conflict. If he's up, you throw it over his head. If he's back, you throw it in front of him. And so sometimes we get those situations in the NFL, but it's not as segmented as I think it is in college. You've got to be able to be more of a full field read type of a quarterback. You've got to know what's going to happen before the ball is even snapped. And for Jaxson Dart, that to me is the big area of his development now that he is on the team, now that he is on the Giants. It's that pre-snap analysis and really getting better at that aspect of the game, because I think a lot of the rest of the physical ability is there.
Yeah, so, I'm trying to get into the mind of Brian Dable, because it's well reported that Jaxson Dart was Brian Dable's guy. He was the one really banging on the table to go get him. And I was talking with a scout who was like, I think the Ole Miss isn't, an NFL offense type, like is a little outdated. And I disagreed with him, but I think the point he was trying to make when we talked was that the deep passing concepts are NFL concepts. Like you mentioned, like the Mills concept, the one he threw a touchdown and an interception with Florida, the Sale concept, which they use a lot. So like the aggressive ones are very similar. It's just that Ole Miss kind of had none of your standard quick game.
Mm-hmm.
Or looking over windows over the middle, but I think that's something that Brian Dable ran with Josh Allen, right? You remember that Gabe Davis 4 touchdown game? It was like those concepts, and Dable hasn't been able to really call those with Daniel Jones over the last 3 years. I think that's why he was in on Jaxson Dart, was to be able to get that aggression, like you said, big game hunter.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. And again, like I do like the landing spot. As some people were like, oh, Jaxson Dart at 3 to the Giants, and I was like, okay, well, hold on there. I'm not in on him at number 3 overall, but regardless of how we got there with the trade up and everything like that, but him being on the Giants now, I think is legitimately a great landing spot. And also, you got to think about this too, like, to have Malik Neighbors as the guy that you are running more of the underneath and more of the quick game stuff with, as much as Malik is great down the field as well. We certainly saw that at LSU. We saw that a little bit last year whenever they were able to dial it up and have success with that. But to me, having that receiver also really helps this transition. And so when you look at Josh Allen's history and sort of how Brian Dable really helped him become sort of the version that he is now consistently today, you've got to be able to feel good about Dart, who is sort of a similar kind of a player. I think that certainly Josh Allen is a little bit more physically gifted and was drafted in the top 10 because of it. But Allen came into the league with just a massive arm. Like, he just wanted to throw the ball deep, and Brian Dable was helpful in helping him become a more well-rounded quarterback. And so, again, regardless of how we got here, I do like the landing spot of Jaxson Dart, and I think that it is going to be interesting to see. And I honestly, I hope this pairing gets more than 1 year, right? I know that everybody finds out. I think that everybody kind of talks about wow, everybody on the Giants on the hot seat, Shane's on the hot seat, Dable's on the hot seat, all that kinds of stuff. But I would really like to see Brian Dable get at least 2 years with Jaxson Dart to see if we've got something here. Now, we know that you don't often get afforded those things in the NFL if you don't have the success the way that you need to. And obviously, Morrow wasn't very happy with how things ended last season anyway. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But I would like to see them get at least 2 years to build that chemistry and see what Dart could become with Dable.
Well, as someone who wasn't a proponent of bringing Shane and Dable back, and also wasn't a proponent of trading up for Jaxson Dart, I agree, because then it's just a really simple I know this is more Giants niche, but Giants ownership, where year 2 for Dart and year 5 for Shane Dable, then it's just a very clean, all right, either all 3 of these guys are staying or all 3 of these guys are out. Where I think the Giants can get in a bad cycle is if they fire Shane and Dable or fire just Dable, then you're getting a coach or GM who, the bias for John Mara is going to be the guy who wants to build around Jaxson Dart. So let's just give them 2 years. But let's talk about that second year, because Dart's going to sit at least half the season or so, I think, at minimum for the Giants. What are some of your worries about Dart, when not in the here and now, but just year 2, when that evaluation really is being made on Dart?
I think that it all just comes down to, how he is going to progress even without the live reps. And when I say that, I mean and I'm not trying to say that I don't think that he's a film room junkie or anything like that, but that's going to be paramount for him in his first year, especially while he's not getting the live reps in game. He's got to be, soaking up as much as he can from, honestly, the veterans in the room with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, and certainly being able to take the teaching of Brian Dable as well. He's got to be in that film room the way that he needs to, because the most advantageous part and the easiest way for him to really hit the ground running is when he gets out there. One, does he have pretty good mastery of the offense? The timing and how things are going to go when it's full speed in game. Yeah, okay, that's going to be a learning curve for that no matter what. but do you have mastery of like guys are where they're supposed to be in the offense the way that you needed to? And then on the flip side, can you recognize defenses the way that you need to in, I think, a lot better way? Because at Ole Miss, it always feels like at Ole Miss, they're very focused on what they do. And I'm not saying that that is a bad thing, but it's kind of like, hey, let's get our offense down. Let's understand where I need to throw the ball, and like it'll just work. And I think the Florida game was sort of, you brought that up. Like, I feel like that's sort of proof of that, as especially in that fourth quarter, the whatever it was, like the 4 minute, 6 minute leg left in the game, he's throwing passes to wide receivers. We're like, yeah, okay, like you're taking a shot, but to me, he was not respecting defenses in that game. And in the NFL, those aren't just PBUs, those aren't just, like incompletions, like those are picks, like those are back-breaking picks again, and those are those turnover-worthy plays that really kill you. So to me, this year and then getting into that second year, I think he's got to just look at NFL defenses specifically and focus so heavy on this is what NFL defenses do. This is what they are capable of. This is how rotations work. This is how match coverage works. And he just really needs to get in the lab in the film room over his first year and take that emphasis. Because again, it just felt like at Ole Miss, they were like, hey, I'm going to master our offense. And if our offense is clicking, like nobody can beat us. And it's cool to have that kind of confidence, but you got to respect defenses. I mean, everybody brings up Tom Brady, but like, it's not just Tom Brady. Like, it's Tom Brady, it's Peyton Manning, it's Drew Brees. It's the best who have ever done it. Not only did they have the ability to do it, they had immense respect for the guys who were on the other side of the line of scrimmage. That's why they studied them so hard. That's why they wanted the answers to the test, if you will, because they knew what they were capable of. And I think that part of it for any rookie quarterback, but certainly for Jaxson Dart, who's probably going to get an ample amount of time to be able to sit, I think that's really what I'd love to see him focus on, so he can hit the ground running whenever he gets in there. Oh, I think you're muted.
Muted. I do that like 3 times a show. Obviously, you're building from the ground up with the quick game in the middle of the field, spacing and timing stuff. Like, that's stuff that is really hard to master, and we've seen it hold back talented quarterbacks. But I think early on, what I'm looking for out of Jaxson Dart is, it's awesome to throw the ball deep 22, 23% of the time, but that's not life in the NFL. And
Right.
That's usually life in the NFL that is like Will Levis' life. And it's very troublesome. Is, like you said, like, are you reading the defense on the deep passing concepts, or are you defaulting to them? I think even that LSU overtime game where it's like, it feels like you're just taking a shot 4 times in a row in overtime to trying to end this game. And it's leading to you, having to kick a 52-yard field goal, and they end up winning that game, or LSU ends up winning that game. Is, how do we deal with finding the middle ground there? Do we, go into a shell and worry about it, or are we over aggressive, where, like you said, it's turning into picks, it's getting, receivers lit up on sale concepts and different things like that. So that'll be like the early judging on Dart. How does he handle that, and how does he handle it when it doesn't go well?
Yeah, intermediate, middle of the field stuff is so important. An area of scouting that I've taken an emphasis to when I'm scouting these guys is, PFF. We can really kind of like sift and focus in on like certain plays, certain categories, certain throws, and between the numbers, between 10 to 19 yards, like the true intermediate middle of the field, you have to be able to attack that level in the NFL. And that is the most dangerous level, right? You have linebackers there, you have corners who are crossing, you have safeties coming down. Like that is the most cluttered, most dangerous area for you to throw the ball. But you have to be able to do that, because if you don't, then defenses will feel like they can spread their coverage out even further. And now, as you're trying to attack the sideline, well, now there's more defenders at the sideline. Now they're getting beats on, deep balls, go balls, where it's like, okay, you might have been able to hold the safety in the middle of the field a little bit better if he thought that there was any chance you were going to throw over the middle, but he knows you're not going to throw over to the middle. So once he sees that wide receiver break up the sideline, even if he's even with the cornerback, he's going to take off to the sideline. He's going to say, okay, I'm going to cut this throw off because I know you're not going to throw it over the middle. So that, again, is a part of Jaxson Dart's the game when, we praise his physical abilities and his arm strength and what he's able to do, that velocity that he has on the ball. You got to be able to drive it in between. You got to be able to drive it in the intermediate middle. And if you could do that, I think you can unlock a lot of different stuff. The deep balls open up a little bit more. That also opens up the quick game, the screen game, the slants, the dig routes, the mesh concepts, things like that. If you can attack over the middle of the field, which Jaxson Dart has the arm to be able to do, he's just got to have that confidence to be able to see it and want to attempt those passes, because they are some of the more difficult ones that you have in the game.
I told you 10 minutes, but I want to finish off with one general like scouting question. I don't know where you were specifically on Jaden Daniels. For my opinion, I was someone who wanted to take the chance, but was worried about those issues you just said, like the middle of the field stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was a couple plays, I think even versus Florida, where it's like, hey, there's a guy wide up in the middle of the field as part of your progression, and then you ran for 70 yards. How do you like what are some of the changes you've made year to year or not at all? Because, Jaden Daniels, where I'm like, even though again I would have taken him for the Giants if he was available or trading up for him. How do you deal with a guy who just kind of went against that thing that like held Justin Fields back and said, "Fuck it, the guy balls"?
Yeah, no, it's hard, right? And for Jaden, I give him all the credit in the world when I say this. He was literally better as a rookie in the NFL than he was in his Heisman Trophy winning season at LSU. Like he was a better player, which is crazy. I mean, that almost never happens. There were three categories with Jaden Daniels as a reason why I was a little bit lower on him. I think I had Drake May and Caleb Williams in my top three overall prospects. And then I think I had Jaden Daniels QB3, but I had him like 21st overall. So he was in the early 20s in my overall rankings. And the reason why is because of three categories. One, it was that middle of the field stuff, right? I emphasize that a lot. And he had some throws where he did throw over the middle, but his eyes weren't always going to that spot. Like you mentioned, there were throws that were out there that he could have made over the middle of the field that he just didn't make. And so I go, okay, is this going to be a player who's going to predominantly throw over the middle of the field the way that we need to at the NFL level? So much of that LSU offense was predicated off of vertical routes, whether it was Brian Thomas Jr. winning vertically on the outside or Malik Neighbors winning on that famous slot fade or seam fade when you're going up the middle and you're winning up the middle vertically. So a lot of it was just vertical stuff, which is great in college. Like you said, you don't always have that opportunity to throw those passes in the NFL. The second was we praised Jaden Daniels for being the runner that he is, the great athlete that he was. But the truth of the matter was, he wasn't a good thrower on the run. And I think there were a lot of people who I think when they looked at Jaden Daniels, they're like, oh, like look at him as a quarterback. He's a great dual threat. He's going to be great on the run. And I was like, oh, hold on. He could be great on the run, but he didn't really show you that at the college level. The number, I cannot remember what the number is off the top of my head, but it was staggering. Like within a 2-year sample size for Jaden Daniels, he had something like 14 completions total where he was scrambling and then threw the ball. Jaden Daniels we're talking about had like 14 in 2 years. Like it was a wildly low number, and it showcased the fact that when he became a runner, when he was scrambling, when he was breaking the pocket, he didn't keep his eyes downfield. He just immediately became a runner. So you can say that he has the ability to be a great throw on the run type of improviser, but he didn't show you that at LSU. He immediately showed you that with Washington, which is great to see. And then the third component is he's skinny. And I don't like focusing too much on that, but when you play the style that he does, where it looks like, man, he's taking some hits where he's like Sonic the Hedgehog and the rings are popping out of him because he's getting popped so hard on the sideline. It's like, dude, we need you to get out of the side. We need you to get out of bounds a little bit earlier. We need you to slide a little bit. And I was sort of worried about the long-term just ability for him to stay healthy. And certainly I hope that he stays healthy and doesn't miss a single game for the next, 15 years that he plays in the NFL. But those are the three categories that held me back from really loving Jaden Daniels more. And I would say that I don't think that I would necessarily change any of the criticism that I had of him there, because I certainly will do that with guys who sort of maybe prove my philosophy or how much I weigh a certain trait a certain way. Like I will definitely be open-minded with how I am scouting, especially as the game changes. But I think with Jaden Daniels, to me, it is just so much more of I'm just going to tip my cap to him because the way that he got better after a Heisman Trophy season, we just don't see that. That to me was the biggest takeaway of Jaden Daniels, and why he is a special football player isn't just because of the potential that he had. It's because he got even better and realized that going from college to the pro level, which almost nobody has the ability to do, or I don't want to say ability to do, nobody does in reality. But Jaden was able to do it at the quarterback position, which is even more difficult to do. So that was sort of my drawbacks for Jaden and when I was scouting him, and then just sort of the respect that I have from him for how well he played in that rookie season.
Also very simplistic. I'm in on the VR goggles. Like I feel like that is have you heard about that? The VR goggles with Jaden?
So I've heard about like he's doing it. I heard that like Jalen Milroe was doing it as well. I've never put them on myself, but they seem very cutting edge. Like they seem very, very useful. So hey, maybe Jaxson Dart, if he's not getting those live reps, maybe he just lives with the VR goggles on this season.
That's what I need it. I need like some QB coach from LSU, the Giants, to hire him and get those VR, steal VR goggles out of the basement or whatever. Trevor, appreciate you jumping on. And we'll try and do again soon.
Appreciate
You,
it,
man.
Bob. Anytime.
All right, we now welcome on Nate Tice of Yahoo Sports. Nate, give me your full 45-minute deep dive into Jackson. No, I feel like these conversations have gotten a little bit awkward. So I told you pre-show. I just want to like start with talking about Jaxson Dart, and again, it's very different talking about a player post-draft with the team that he's on than pre-draft just analysis. Like, how would you describe Jaxson Dart as a player now that he's been drafted and you're not projecting where he's going to go?
My like one liner on him, even like 2-word thing, is he's a tough athlete. That's when first and foremost, that's what kind of stands out. Very competitive. I would say really a better athlete than others in this draft class that were described as athletes, as a scrambler, as a designed runner, willing to run between the tackles. Actually has really, really good vision. And this is something that's I'm going to start talking on both sides of my mouth. It's not always the best thing when you start with that, when you're talking about the quarterback. I would say as a thrower, Jaxson Dart, when he is locked in and feels comfortable with what he's seeing, also has high end throws, a very good arm, I would say. It throws a nice deep ball. But it can be, when I say locked in, that was part of the kind of back and forth when I watched him as a prospect, a Ole Miss. And this becomes a long discussion of, is this what Lane Kiffin wanted? Or could he do more? Or is Lane Kiffin just wants everything to be guardrails because he just wants to hold the controller of what the play is? Like, no, this guy's going to be open. That's what you have to see. I don't get to interview Jaxson Dart, so I can't determine that. But I can see when watching him from a film perspective, he is very toolsy. And I could see the appeal of that, right? Being a little ball of clay to work with. I will say that when I watched him, he had some inconsistencies, maybe just getting the ball out on time, progressing on throws, maybe sometimes took too many sacks, maybe did things where it felt a little panicky, where it was kind of just like, okay, you need a little bit more time. So I end up liking Dart. I didn't, obviously quarterbacks is just such a such a different discussion of like where you take them, because it's the quarterback position, and if it's right, it's like who cares what you invested to get him. I was comfortable with him on day 2. That's the type of kind of this archetype of player. But there's starter qualities here, but I just do think he would need time, because I just think of what the offense he came from, even just working under center. But there are aspects where he could play, fairly early, because he's just toolsy and can kind of playground it a little bit while he figures it out. So it's tangibles, that's what it is with him. And apparently teammates like to describe him in funny ways, like Tyrone Tracy today. When
I didn't see that. You must saw it before me.
he said he had Italian swagger.
Talking about Tommy DeVito or Jackson?
No. He was talking about Jaxson Dart.
Okay.
With Tommy DeVito in the same room.
Yeah, Dable and Shane have been pitching this line that I kind of roll my eyes out a little bit. It's like, Tommy's got the most experience in the offense in the room. I was like, I just feel like he's not leading Russell Wilson meetings. Like I have a feeling that Russell Wilson is leading those meetings, but that's where Tommy's rubbing off.
He's in that room too.
Yeah. It's like,
Alpha, man.
Yeah, I guess that's where Tommy's rubbing off. Is he's going to be wearing a nice chain and a wife beater to training camp.
I got to find the exact quote, because it was noteworthy.
Yeah,
it was pretty good.
So, talking about it takes time. What do you like look at individually? Like, what specifically do you view Dart where it's like, this is where we really got to start from the ground up here?
Just comfort progressing from the pocket. I think with him is Lane Kiffin's offense is a money play offense, where it was like, okay, we're running these 5 plays. I mean, how many times, I know because I've seen you tweet it, but how many times you see him running that play action where they pull the guard and there's an over out, and they run it 5 times a game. They dress it, and he does a nice job dressing it up. It was just, everything felt locked in for Jaxson Dart. I was like, hey, this is going to be open. Okay, now I would like him to just grow his branches and progress from the pocket, as opposed to just being one and done. Now that is fine. Like I think he is young enough, and I think he's athletic enough and toolsy enough that I'm willing to work with that. This is this is a sidebar, but there's other quarterbacks in this draft class, one that went in the 5th round, that this was the discussion. It's the tools that you have to work with to progress from this. So I would say just comfort from the pocket. I think he can take a few more sacks when he's trying to will something open, so some of that pocket movement as well, like where he's trying to really move back to find a throw. So I think some of that aggression needs to be honed in, but I'm comfortable with that. I'd much rather have a guy that's too aggressive than not aggressive at all, and you have to eke it out of him. But so, yeah, I would say comfort progressing from the pocket. I know that sounds kind of abstract or just broad, I would say, but that's really what it sounds like a young quarterback.
Aggression is like the word I keep coming back to, like with because again, I wasn't someone that was super high on Jaxson Dart, but like, okay, aggression. Now let's see how we work out. Like you can't just be aggressive or you're Will Levis and you become a meme.
Yeah.
And what my question is, like, again, how do you start working those regular intermediate passes, like the quick game stuff, where it's just like they don't run it at Ole Miss, and when they do, it's like the free access hitches, and then they'll run, that juke route.
Yep.
Which the Giants run that play a lot, but still, like there's just not a lot of understanding of spacing and stuff, because that's not what Kiffin did. The question is the aggression. Is it, like you said, is it just built in? This is where we're throwing. Like, and I think an example of this is the Florida game, and not to be in a fourth quarter failure, but like that Mills concept was a beautiful touchdown in the second quarter or whatever it was. Like, it's amazing. But he also threw that same ball into triple coverage, and what ended up, losing them the game.
Right.
Is that so? It makes you question the first one. It's like, are you just throwing this here because that's what they're telling you to throw here, or are you reading that cover for safety?
That was my pessimism with Dart. So you're kind of, I agree with you, actually, or kind of like, I should say, I could kind of like extrapolate on that, is that's what I keep saying, that term locked in, or it seems one and done. That's what it really felt like when you watched him. And if he were a redshirt sophomore, it was only 1 year starting and was like that, I would have, again, more comfort. He has a lot of starts, like he has a lot of reps. And it is kind of one of those things too, where this is why interviews are important, because then if it's like getting with him, it's going like, okay, all right, are you able to comfort on this? And this is where I don't want to, again, Senior Bowl can kind of get out of hand, but watching him at the Senior Bowl, he wasn't really comfortable taking under center snaps. And that scares me. And I know it's just a one little thing, but it's like, all right, that's how much we have to work with, or where we're starting with you is like, okay, we have to get comfortable with you even taking under center snaps, so it's kind of like, what is your starting point? That's why I thought he was a day 2 project, because I just keep speaking to tools and speaking to his physical ability, because I just don't see the progression. I never really saw it consistently. And even if there's concepts, and why I want to bring up that play action concept again, this is where just watching tape sometimes, interviews always help, but like sometimes watching tape, I can kind of maybe paint a picture of what a guy is. It may be wrong, but I can kind of start filling in the lines about like what this player is. And I think when I watched Dart, I bring up that play action concept. I never saw him progress on it. It was, and there are, it's not just a one and done route concept. It was just, it's a go over and a short dig behind it. And he never got to the backside dig. He just went over, and it was hell or high water, over or scramble. And again, that brings me a little worry. Again, if it was his first year starting, I'm willing to argue away or go like, yeah, he'll kind of figure this out. But if that's, you've been doing it several weeks, several times in that same game, that's where I have some red alerts about like, can you learn? My other concern is that sometimes the ball's out late. He takes an extra hitch. Are you a guy that has to see it open, or can you actually anticipate? And can you anticipate when you have to progress? That's what NFL quarterbacking is. It's like it's easy to get to 1 and done, but it's like, can you get to 2 and 3? Can you shortcut to 2 and 3? And can you anticipate getting there? Tools are great. Tools just give you room for error. Tools don't always, that's what tools do. That's what arm and athleticism do. It gives you a bailout if you're late on the throw, or if you have to scramble and create. But you have to start at first base. You have to get on base first.
So you're a proponent of him sitting, and as am I. I want to ask you this, because you have more experience in what an NFL team looks like from, OTAs to the end of the season. What do you think they're going to do? Like, how do you progress him when it's week 2 and you're preparing for the other opponent? Like, how do you progress Dart once training camp breaks?
It's so hard because he's probably going to run the scout team. So even if he's not running a scout team, if they carry 3 quarterbacks or however they do it, uh, though it's limited reps because those guys that are starters, I mean, they need the reps too. If you're installing kind of maybe third down and red zone stuff, base install plays are pretty simple to carry over, especially guys. Say Russell Wilson starts, he has a lot of starts under his belt, so he can kind of translate some of it. So maybe he doesn't need the exact reps, but you have to balance that out. God, it's just so hard because once the regular season starts, there's not a lot of reps to go around. Last year, the Patriots I can't believe I'm saying this, kind of sort of did an okay job with splitting reps between Jacoby Brissett and Drake May before May started, where he was getting reps with the ones in their game prep. The biggest thing that Dart is going to have to learn, as all young quarterbacks have to learn, is protection stuff and just third down, red zone, more situational stuff that changes week to week. And so there's that's good mental reps because that's just preparation. So if he's truly the backup and gets to kind of maybe mentally get there, work with the starting center, work with the backup center, talk with them, that's what learning kind of being a pro quarterback is. And I'd much rather have that than any on-field stuff because it's kind of like early on. I can already see what September Jaxson Dart would look like. I would be curious maybe November Jaxson Dart after the Giants open up with a brutal start of the schedule. I would like to see that, but he's not a guy.
He keeps trying to poke oh, this is a place where he could start, and it's like, oh, the next 3 games are pretty brutal here too.
13, like really. I looked at it. I looked it up yesterday. So he's an eval where it's like, yeah, I'd like to see him get his feet wet and maybe run around a little bit, but where mental growth is going to be the biggest thing. So I think no matter what, I would not like to see him start September or even October and let him just get the game prep reps. And then we'll talk in the second half of the year.
Yeah. So I want to finish off with this, even though we're sitting here doing Jaxson Dart stuff. So we just did our way too early draft preview week that we do every year, where we kind of just look at the top guys.
Oh yeah.
There's 3 guys I fell in love with in the process. Isaiah World, I think, I actually watched the spring game of Oregon. I was like, oh, there's progression here made from Oregon.
Yeah.
But 2 guys on the defensive side, Jermon McCoy, who I had a moment where I was like, I fell in love with him, and then I went to go search his name. I was like, I like this guy enough, I want to follow him on Twitter, and then saw it towards the ACL. But Peter Woods is the other one, and I saw that you had him number 1.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to lose the amount of games that it would take to get Peter Woods, but I have thought about, like, this schedule is tough, and could you imagine just creating the most monstrous D-line the NFL can see? You just put Peter Woods next to Dex, have Abdul and Brian Burns, and just have your future and your now all at the same time.
Oh my God, it'd be incredible. And he actually has great synergy with Dexter Lawrence too. Like as far as like where they're going to line up, like you can do anything you want, and he can kick out the 3-4 end. Like if you didn't want to do some 3 downside, I love him. I compared him to Quinnen Williams. I since freshman year, he was one of those guys. I was like, who the F is this? Then I looked it up and I was like, oh, 5-star recruit. Okay, so but then I have Excel docs or Google Sheets, and I started my 2026 big board. So this would have been 2 years ago, and he was the first name I jotted down. Him and the running back from Notre Dame.
Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, those were the first 2 guys I jotted down on this big board. It was but Peter Woods, day 1. But I think he is special, like special, absolute game wrecker. So yeah, I'm with you on that fan fiction, on that vision.
A lot of times, the way too early draft previews we do, it's like we just, because I don't watch college ball as much in season. Yeah. So we just kind of go off of like what everyone has and just watch them. And then I'm like, man, 8 of these guys I don't fucking think are that good. And then the next year they end up going in the second round and stuff. But it was him. I was like, okay, pumped about him. And then Jermon McCoy out of Tennessee. I'm like, this guy is just fucking sticky. And he's physical. I was like, even when Jeremiah Smith got him for that touchdown in the playoffs, but I was like, even that had to be a perfect throw, like outside shoulder and on stride. And then I saw he tore his ACL, and I was like heartbroken for him.
Yeah, I mean, he had top 10 potential. They have another guy that I like too, Tennessee, Ricky Gibson, the third.
What position is he?
Another corner.
Oh, okay.
Well, I want to make sure that he came back and he didn't transfer. It's so hard to like, if you don't keep.
That was the whole offensive episode of like, this guy is playing at this school, and this guy's playing at that school. Defense, actually, most of the guys stayed.
I put via, like, okay, where they were before, in parentheses on next to my notes, and it looks like second round draft picks in the NBA.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah.
Which I kind of like. I'm like, you know what? I don't have to like see how good Isaiah World really is because he's playing, UNLV is like his toughest.
Yeah, I don't have to wait till a Senior Bowl or Shrine Game or something like that. I know. No, it's a good tackle class. Utah's got two dudes. I think their left tackle, Caleb Lomu, is excellent as well. Yeah, they got a couple guys. So yeah, there's some good tackles and a couple interesting quarterbacks.
Yeah, so we looked at your guy Mendoza, where
Yeah.
Mendoza's, and I said we'd do this 10 minutes, but I was like, let me have
I told you, I'm always long. It's always over.
Mendoza's so weird because he's like, man, he processes well. It's the middle of the field, all that shit. But it's like, why doesn't he throw the ball deep though? Like I don't really see any shots on here. And Cal didn't put him on the menu a ton, so it's not like he was turning down. But there was some that he turned down. I was like, very weird where this guy's so aggressive over the middle of the field, but it's not actually pushing the ball down the field often.
He reminds me, I'm not saying he's to this level, but he does remind me a lot of Matt Ryan. Matt was always kind of more of like, I'd much rather pepper the middle of the field than launch it deep. He would, but that's just like that's how he like chose to win. And he's like, very long Mendoza. So was Matt. They have those just long bodies.
Yeah.
And like, just, it's very elongated, but like, and not like an excellent athlete, but just very like, good athlete, a fine enough athlete to like do some things and throw on the move. He surprised me. He was my last quarterback on my short list I watched, and thank God I did. Because I remembered watching him during the season. I remember the Auburn game and I remember the Miami game, and I was like, okay, he's got a little juice on the arm. Okay. That's all I thought about it. And then watch like 5 games of him on film. And there's some really, really, really special stuff. It's a lot of projection because I just think that Indiana offense is going to be juicy for him. And like he's going to make a living with back shoulder throws to Surratt. They have a nice little receiver there. So it's a little like I'm a little ahead of schedule on him. But he does some nice things. He does some stuff that translates. And that's why it takes a little too many sacks. But I also thought that was part of the Cal offense. More than him. I think he'll just be a hot, above average kind of sack guy, not like the extreme that he is right now. And I mean, Nussmeier's cool. Lenore Sellers is cool.
Yeah, we did Sellers. That's, obviously needs a ton of work, but he's fucking crazy talented.
Easy to see. Yeah. Super young too. He's like still 19, I think, right now.
Yeah, he's already got like $8 million of like NIL or something, which I know doesn't actually mean anything, but it means like, it's like, all right, maybe you're built with the right stuff.
Yeah.
It's that makes narrative. Like Jalen Milroe, even though I think Jalen Milroe is probably going to be terrible, it's like, yeah, but he is like, a Nick Saban coach, as you ordered Czar Miller. I'm like, oh, okay. I have a reason to buy into you. Where with Anthony Richardson, you hear it's like, yeah, they all hate him in Indy, so don't buy into it.
Don't think he's lazy. Well, that's the thing with like Milroe too. Even was. I mean, he was so raw. Like, and just, I've never seen a guy throw the ball past the line of scrimmage more ever than him, where he was past the line of scrimmage and threw it. But I was at the combine and I swear to God, 3 different people, 3 like coach execs that I knew, like went out of their way to go like, who rocked in the interview? Jalen Milroe. He was awesome. And I was like, so this guy, every coach loves him. Like everyone just like adores him. And it's like, I just wanted a little more. Because I like the idea of him, but it was like, oh, that's a lot of sacks. That's a lot of wild throws. Even if you got a lot of juice on that arm and you can run a little bit. But he went kind of in the perfect range, though.
That's where he ended the 3rd round is where he was. When the Giants, and it was talking about the Giants taking him at 34, I was like, that's right. I understand the need is big, but this seems a little crazy here. Like no, I'm not a big on Jaxson Dart either. But I was like, with Milroe, you kind of have to have some admitting that you're probably lighting the pick on fire. And a high second to be admitting that is kind of crazy.
Too rich. It's Tavares Jackson back in the day. It's 3rd round though. 3rd round dart throw QBs, even though it barely works out. That's where I'm comfortable with it. Once you get back,
I'm never comfortable with it, honestly. Like every year,
you have to live in that world.
Now it's different because now but every year I do a mailbag is like, what about taking? I just like, all right, let's go through the last 7 years. There's none.
It never worked.
For and Jalen Hurts. That's it. I was like, the 3rd best guy here is like Sam Howell. So you are lighting these picks on fire.
Yeah, it's like Dak, Kirk, and then Purdy.
Yeah, Dak was 2016. After 2016, it's Purdy, Hurts. I think those are the only guys who
I think that's it,
like
right?
top 20 starters.
Carl Fuller, second rounder, was just 2015. He was 2014 draft.
Yeah, there was more. I think the. I just feel like teams are more willing to take. There's no like teams are just taking quarterbacks at the end of the first. That those guys who are like second and third rounders, they don't really exist anymore.
Well, that's what this whole quarterback cycle, like, cards on the table. It's like I would have been more comfortable with Dart in Milrose range, right where he went. Like that's where I would have taken, because I consider them kind of that same tier. I thought Dart had a little bit, actually kind of, they were similar toolsy kind of guys. But that's where I like taking those guys. And so that's where the discussion for, which like even a guy like Shadur was like, oh, well, all right, well, he has some work to do. All right, well, okay. So if he has some work to do, we're talking day 2. And then you talk about tools. And it was like, that's why I always thought that was rich. And same with even like Tyler, like Shuck. It was like, yeah, he's got some nice stuff. But we're talking about a mid guy in his mid-20s, and he's like a pretty good athlete. I actually thought he was actually a much better athlete than you anticipate. But it was also, he gets rid of the ball all the time. Like he's not going to really just do a little bit of extra stuff. So it's like, where am I comfortable taking that? Always like in the third round. And like, that's where I always just come back to. So like my big boards always end up kind of looking like weird compared to other people's, because I like deflate these quarterbacks because it's like, that's where I'm comfortable taking them. I get there's inflation and stuff. So I'm spinning in circles, but
I see it. Yeah, I told you we do 10 minutes. I was like, let me ask him about people.
Who else did you watch from next year's draft class? There's gonna be
So
one more.
we watched 6. Well, I did 20 because now that's
you want to talk to people.
I did
because
I did
my own little cocoon about it.
Hey, I'm glad. So I did a preseason mock. So I actually took Caleb Lomu in there. So we did the
Fano is good too, but Lomu is, I think, the dude.
Yeah. Wait, Lomu is the left tackle, right?
Left tackle.
Yeah. Okay. That's
who moved the left tackle to right tackle, which I think is significant.
So I know it seems lazy. It's like 6'7", 350 guy from Alabama, but I'm learning from my Evan Neal mistakes with Proctor, where it's like I understand that 90% you can put together a highlight tape of him getting to his landmarks and his length stopping guys. But look at the negatives with him and then think about NFL rushers and how much they're going to take advantage of that, where I'm kind of out on him. Francis Mauigoa I like, but I think if he were to come out now, it'd be a guard.
Yep. I haven't
seen. Who else did we look at? We looked at, what's the Jordan Tyson.
Okay.
Again, I don't think he's everybody
from Florida. Austin Barber from
Florida. Nah, those were the only 4 tackles with Isaiah World. Those are the 4 tackles.
Yes. I'm with you. I'm right there with you on Proctor. Like J.C. Latham was kind of my, like, he was the cutoff for me. Like oversized tackles. Like it was like, I think you're okay. I mean, his rookie year, he's going back to right tackle, so I think it'll be okay. But it was like, I don't know. I think Proctor's not the tier of athlete that Latham was at that size. They're similar, like built almost the same.
Yeah. So Jordan Tyson is the guy who just kind of gets open. He's not going to be the, all pro, but he's going to be good. On defense, Ruben Bain. I know Ruben Bain is what Shamar Stewart truthers say Shamar Stewart is. Where it's like, yeah, he's not a great pass rusher, but
he's useful.
Now Samar's a better run defender, but like Bain's a good run defender.
Bain grew on me. I don't think he's different than how people described him, or I think what he's getting hyped as. Like I think in the pros he's more of a mauler, like more of a overly oversized kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him this year. Like how to use that power to your advantage a little more. Let's see who we hit the defensive guys.
The linebackers are sweet.
The Texas guy. I just want to see him play a little more physical. In coverage, it just felt like they throw past his ears a ton.
Gotcha.
But the sideline shit, it's just like he eliminates at every angle on every offensive lineman whenever they get out on the corners.
Yeah. The third was dude's cool too, CJ Allen. He's like him. He's like a notch down from Hill, I think. But I like him too. There's a couple other good linebackers too.
The Clemson corner, Avion Terrell, I think.
Yeah, AJ Terrell.
Where it's like talented, but need you to figure it out a little bit more.
And
but before I go all in on these, say it again.
Please put on 10 pounds.
Yeah. Or like you may be like having conversations about nickel. even though he's a feisty run defender, so that kind of fits him a little bit. But it was just, there's too often where he's playing like 8 yards off and guys are just running past him, not because he's slow, but because he's just not like diagnosing the fact that they're going vertical.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, I told you, one more question. We actually spent more time on that than the Dart stuff. I'm glad. Be good. They're full scale. Nate Tice of Yahoo Sports, thank you for jumping on with me, and we'll definitely not do this segment soon because I'm hoping the Giants just have their quarterback, but we'll do something.
Right.
So.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, we now welcome on Bengal to talk about Jaxson Dart. Since you're a Giants fan, I want to give you the opportunity to talk from a Giants fan point of view a little more than some of the other guys. And I'll ask you this. What is, would be your ideal plan for Jaxson Dart? I think that's maybe the topic that I've been beating to death in every interview we've done all summer. Play this many games, if people does this in training camp. But what is your ideal plan for Jaxson Dart as someone who, watched them before the draft?
Sure. I think that a lot of people want him to play earlier because we just got this shiny new thing. It's like Christmas morning. You want to unwrap it and play with it right away. But I just don't think that's best case scenario for his development. I think not everyone has the luxury of this. I'm not sure that the Giants will. But best case scenario, I think Jaxson Dart gets the Mahomes treatment, where you do not see this guy for a full year until final week of the season or somewhere around that. Obviously, it depends where the Giants are in the standings and who that opponent's going to end up being, where you feel good about putting him in, getting, first team reps in live game action. I just think that you look at the Lane Kiffin offense, it's such a crutch for quarterbacks. And I feel like if you put Jaxson Dart in too early into a very, very different Brian Daboll offensive structure against NFL defenses where everything's moving faster. And Jaxson Dart was already not that careful with the football at times, putting it in harm's way. In the NFL, where windows close faster, you got to get rid of the ball and make decisions quicker. I just think it would be a disaster in year one. And I think starting quarterback week one of year two, I can get on board with that, right? Because there's no guarantee that you're going to have Wilson back, obviously, 1-year deal. No guarantee Winston's going to be there. DeVito, same deal. But I think if you can put all your eggs in the Jaxson Dart starting year two basket, maybe get him some reps in the back end of year one, I think that's best case scenario. I'm excited to see what he can do against vanilla defenses in the preseason. Anyone can look good there. Daniel Jones has looked amazing in the preseason.
That preseason was one of the most electric times as a Giants fan for the last 10 years.
Well, he's playing against man coverage and cover 3, cover 4, no stunts, twists, no games. I mean, no overloads. It's just stock defense, if you want to say that, with different coverages. So I feel like anyone can look good. Obviously, you still have to make those plays. You still have to go where the ball's supposed to go. Still have to recognize the coverage. And I think a lot of this is going to be new for Jaxson Dart. And I'm excited to see what he can do. But not year one, hopefully.
Start sit becomes like it's a new NFL debate of like, if you let Anthony Richardson sit, he'd be good. And, look at Patrick Mahomes and Jordan Love. But then you can also look at CJ Stroud and Jaden Daniels. But I do think it is like a case by case basis. And I don't think I don't think if Anthony Richardson sat for majority of his rookie year, he'd be all this great, be on this trajectory for a great quarterback. But for someone specifically like Jaxson Dart, I do want to see him sit for at least, 3/4 of the season. Because one, like you said, that Ole Miss offense is just not transferable in what it does. Now, the deep passing concepts are very similar to the NFL ones, but you're not going to live off of deep passing concepts in the NFL. Even though I think those are the reasons why Daboll wanted him. But he hasn't set any type of protection, right? Anytime there was some type of blitz stuff, he didn't see it. His offensive line didn't see it. And Ole Miss didn't have any semblance of an NFL quick game. And that takes, as much as it sounds like, that's the easy part, throw the quick passes. You got to trust spacing and timing and stuff. And quarterbacks really struggle with that. And you could even look at a guy like a Justin Fields. They're like, he's got all this talent and stuff.
Never got on time. His entire 4 years, 5 years, it never got on time.
Yeah, so that is something where he needs to get repetition because not to say that the time, or what, like you said, sitting may not make him good at that. But he does need to get reps at it where he just didn't have that at Ole Miss. So that's why I am more eager to see him sit where, if they drafted Cam Ward, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, let's sit. Even Shador, I wouldn't be on this like, oh, he needs to sit 3/4 of the season. Where Dart obviously needs to. So with Dart, 2-part question. If he works out, what's the thing about his game that you think will be the reason why he works out? And if he doesn't work out, what do you think will be one of the things we look at and like the big negative that holds him back from being a good QB?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if he works out, I think you look at the track record over his collegiate career, he's gotten better every year. Everyone says is a tough guy. He motivates his teammates. He elevates everybody around him. They believe in him. I think that is important, even though those are not on-field traits necessarily. I think that you talked about this is why Brian Daboll wanted him. He makes explosive plays happen. Sometimes it's with his legs, sometimes it's with his arm. And I mean, everyone's seen the Duke throw at this point. You see that, you're like, this is what this guy can do at the peak. So I think best case scenario, he can be an out of construct improviser that makes plays happen. And I think worst case scenario, he's a guy that's just too careless with the football, that makes mistakes in big moments. And we saw that at Ole Miss. This was a guy who, unfortunately, oftentimes late in the game, puts the ball in harm's way, trying to do too much, trying to play hero ball, not being smart, not being careful. And a lot of times in the NFL, the quarterbacks that are the most successful are not necessarily the flashiest, even though it's easy to point to the guys that are and the guys that make the flashy plays happen. You look at Patrick Mahomes over the past few years, he's not exactly putting up these unbelievable numbers like he was early on before the league kind of adapted to him. But he takes what's there. He's gotten smarter as his career has gone on. And Dart's going to need to do that, obviously. And to your point with the quick game, that's going to end up being a big part of it, whether Jaxson Dart succeeds or fails. And not necessarily just the quick game, but making quick decisions. That's going to be it. It's processing. Can Dart elevate in that area? Because it's something he has not had to do. So we'll obviously see if that happens or not. But I'm going to say if he succeeds, to wrap it all up, it's his ability to create and make magic happen. And if he's not, it's probably not finding the balance and trying to be that big time hero ball playmaker a little bit too much and not getting on time with his throws and processing the NFL.
Yeah, I think some of the big positives and negatives for Dart are like two-sided, where he threw the ball deep more than any first round QB out of the last 3 years, and maybe even longer than that. But I just remember pre-draft, I went and looked at those numbers over the last 3 years. 22%. That's crazy, right? Like, I think only Will Levis threw the ball that deep that much. And I like that aggression. He took the more aggressive throw, and that's what Brian Daboll wants. And he's ran Brian Daboll deep passing concepts to do that. The issue is that I thought against the SEC, he was just a bad deep passer. The numbers, less than 30% completion rate, which is bad. And, I've watched all the throws over and over again. Like they missed. He was inaccurate on those throws. But he does have arm talent. It's not like, oh, he's got this noodle arm. It's just like, get into these throws a little better. Because when he does hit the big throws, they're special. Like you mentioned the Duke throw. That Kentucky 4th down where he, finds the tight end of the middle of the field. Like you do see it. So it's not like a bad arm talent. I've compared his arm talent to Dak, which again is a, really good quarterback outside the playoff games. And then, like you mentioned, like the leadership, aggression. I think Daniel Jones made me stop being excited about the quarterback who puts his shoulder down stuff. Now I'll probably get refired back up with the new quarterback when Jackson does it. But again, it's controlling those emotions because he even admitted in his Gruden video, the emotions got the best of me. And you saw it in the end of the Florida one is the one everyone points to. But you look at the LSU 4th quarter and overtime and that Kentucky end of the game, like those were a lot of big moments that he came up short in. So I think it's like a two-sided coin. It's like you like the aggression. The playmaking, I think, is good. Like you said, is running ability to throw on the run. But can you be a deep passer without being a reckless deep passer? And then in those moments, we like that aggression. We like that, but let's turn that into positives and not, getting over emotional and just throwing a ball because you want to make the play there. So, all right, Bengal, thank you for jumping on. I'm sure we'll talk soon. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, now welcome on James Foster of Wide Left, probably one of the more underrated draft analysts out there as you've like starting to grow. Some of the guides and stuff that you do and the videos you do are pretty sick. So with here talking Jaxson Dart, I want you to kind of highlight your process with quarterbacks and I guess Jaxson Dart specifically. Like, what is your process with evaluating a quarterback and specifically Dart and what you learned from that?
Yeah, so my process for quarterbacks is usually watching every Power 4 game, and I'll flip through every FCS game. So like, the 8 SEC games, anything in the postseason. Dart kind of did clean up on some bad competition early in the year. Um, watch those games, but yeah, I mean, really, I'm trying to look for stuff that translates to the NFL, which is a little bit tricky for quarterbacks that come from offenses like Tennessee or Ole Miss. But yeah, I mean, really like accuracy, pocket movement, anticipation, arm talent. Those are really the things that I'm looking for.
What are some of the things that like you with Jaxson Dart specifically that flashed? Again, not saying like you have him as a first, second, whatever, but like what are the things that like flashed that you think Brian Dable is buying into?
Well, I mean, the first thing is the accuracy. I remember watching him last year, like, I think I was actually watching Quinshon Judkins, and he kind of popped on tape last year just because of how consistent his accuracy was. Like, I remember deep shots down the sideline, especially in 2023, which is such a consistent throw for him. So he stood out to me in the summer as a guy that, like, I was thinking, potentially like a day two, solid day two pick. Wasn't fully on board with him as a first round player, but yeah, I was pretty aware of him heading into the year. Starts off 2024 on an incredible run. And then, like I said, kind of came back down to earth a little bit as the competition increased, but I think like in general played really well last year. So yeah, I mean, it's the accuracy and then like the combination of that with his mobility, I think is a really good starting point just in terms of natural talent for a quarterback. And as we'll get into, like it's a difficult thing because one of my drawbacks for him is that he hasn't proven the ability to operate an NFL pro style offense, but that's just something that he hasn't proven that he can do. It's not something he's shown that he can't do. So it'll be really interesting to see how he adjusts to a more traditional offensive structure in the NFL.
Yeah, like it's kind of building from I guess the aggressive concepts are like NFL concepts, but those aren't being run nearly as often in the NFL. Um, what are the things? So what is like your biggest drawback on Dart outside of just the offense isn't translatable to the NFL?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it's really two things. It's like, he wasn't asked to challenge tight windows over the middle of the field, and like hit his second and third read. That's the first thing, and then the second thing is that he isn't really experienced navigating pressure in the pocket. Stepping up, keeping his eyes downfield as he's evading a free runner. It's kind of like when he gets pressured, he's either scrambling, which in the SEC resulted in an explosive play, or taking a sack pretty much. So those are the two things. I mean, you mentioned like they'll run like sail concepts and stuff. So he's got some experience kind of making like one quick read and just like a decision to the sideline. But a lot of Ole Miss's offense pretty much shielded him from having to account for multiple defenders at once, like when he's reading the field. And that's really the most difficult thing I think as far as translating to the NFL is like having the comfortability to like hit that backside dig, knowing that the middle hook defender is widened out enough, like understanding the timing and spacing of passing lanes. That's just not something that he really has experience with. And so it's just there's not a lot of evidence on tape of him executing the things that he's gonna have to do like every single third and medium, basically.
Talent wise, where would you put him? Whether that's like a comp to somebody in the NFL or, ranking, like just like arm talent and athletic ability.
Well, definitely more talented than Daniel Jones. I was I was watching the Leak Neighbors a lot these past few weeks, and like it's I even kind of like underrated in my mind how bad he was last year specifically. So just like having, you know, every deep target to Malik Neighbors isn't going to be off target. I think that'll be a huge upgrade. I would say his arm is kind of like B plus. I don't. I think probably like very similar to Cam Ward, just in terms of pure arm talent. The Josh Allen comparisons, I feel like I've got no idea where that's coming from, to be honest. But um, to me, there's like no way that Jaxson Dart fails in the NFL. And we look back on it and it's like, yeah, he just didn't have the arm to get it done. Like, I think, what he can do as far as physically throwing the ball is more than enough. Checks the size box, and then he's got the mobility. Incredibly productive runner at Ole Miss. And so there's a lot of projectable traits as far as being a dual threat, but then also being able to like navigate the pocket and stuff if he can just improve his feel under pressure.
So we'll just kind of finish with this. What is like your let's say the Titans had the third pick and the Giants had the first pick and roles were reversed, because obviously what would your like feeling be on like Jaxson Dart in that situation and how it's going to play out?
Well, I don't think that he's not a guy that I would have been considering in the same conversation as like Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. It's obviously really tough because the Titans and Giants, I think, were two incredibly quarterback desperate teams this year. And so, maybe that's something they consider at 3. I still would have gone with, best of Hunter or Carter that was on the board. But, to be able to get Carter and then obviously you trade back up, but it's not like they gave up a massive haul to get Jaxson Dart. I think the cumulative haul was pretty good for the Giants.
So I know this whole show that I'm doing is about Dart, but I wanted to talk to you about Marcus Bowe specifically.
Yeah.
Where do you think his position ends up being? Because you watch him and it's the things he does is like, this is like high level stuff. Like I think he's just too smart to not figure out at some level in the NFL. But the strength issues are issues. I don't know if going inside works there. So maybe center could work. But where do you think his home is at? Because I kind of can come back to landing a tackle for him.
So I had him as a center, but I definitely understand having him as a tackle. Like, I think if there's one position that he's not, I would say guard. And I totally agree with your assessment of him. Like, I remember he was another guy that I scouted in the summer, and I thought he was just one of the most talented, skilled offensive linemen in this class. Like the hand technique that he uses is pretty incredible for such a young player. And just like the edge and competitive play style that he has, like there's so much going for him. I thought he was going to end up as a like kind of top 50-ish guy for me, but when you watch all of his 2024 tape, the anchor is such a real concern. Just it can't really sit down and like set a wide pocket. It is a real big issue for him, and kind of like at the point of contact, he gets rocked back on his heels and kind of just like easily controlled by bigger pass rushers. And so he's got to add play strength, I think, to thrive at any position in the NFL. I do think center would be his best fit. That just kind of seems like what his build really projects towards. But a very similar player stylistically, like Roger Rosengarten, had a great rookie season for the Ravens at right tackle, and so I think that could absolutely be his long-term future position.
All right, man. I appreciate it. I'll put your links for everything in the description below, and we'll have to do it again. Thanks, man.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's an episode. Again, no regular episode later this week. We're going to do a 24-hour live stream, and then we have 1 week before we get to training camp. You're going to get some cool shots there. Really excited for what we're going to do there. So appreciate you guys. Again, support the show, patreon.com/GiantsNation. We'll see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.